Tonight, a poor single father accidentally rescues a drunk female CEO in a torrential downpour. But when he takes her home, her husband greets him with a cold smile and says, "I finally found you, Ryan Cole." This stranger knows his name, knows his past as a pilot that he's tried to bury. And now he's demanding Ryan return to the skies, the place that ruined his life. Follow the story to the end. Like and comment with the city you're watching to let me know how far this story has progressed. Ryan Cole pushed through the heavy glass doors of the warehouse, his boots scuffing against wet concrete as the rain hammered down outside. The shift had run late again, nearly midnight, and his back ached from loading pallets all evening. He tugged his jacket tighter and glanced at his phone. One missed call from Mrs. Chen, his neighbor who watched Emma after school. He'd check in when he got to the truck. The parking lot stretched out before him, empty except for a handful of cars scattered under flickering yellow lights. Most of his coworkers had already left hours ago. Ryan didn't mind. Overtime meant extra money, and extra money meant Emma could keep taking her art classes. That was worth a sore back. He was halfway to his pickup when he heard it, a sharp, uneven scraping sound. Metal on asphalt. He stopped, listening. The rain was loud, but the noise came again, closer this time. Somebody was out here. Ryan turned and squinted through the downpour. Near the far edge of the lot, a figure in a dark coat was leaning heavily against the side of a sedan, one hand braced on the hood. The person's movements were slow, unsteady, drunk, maybe, or hurt. He hesitated. It wasn't his problem. He didn't know this person. He should get in his truck, drive home, and check on Emma. But the figure stumbled, nearly went down, caught themselves at the last second. Ryan swore under his breath and started walking. As he got closer, the figure resolved into a woman, tall, maybe late 30s, wearing a sleek black coat that was now soaked through. Her heels scraped uselessly against the wet pavement as she tried to stay upright. Her hair clung to her face in dark, tangled strands. "Hey," Ryan called out. "You okay?" She didn't answer, didn't even look up, just kept fumbling with her car keys, dropping them twice before Ryan reached her side. "Ma'am?" He crouched down, picking up the keys before she could. "You're in no shape to drive." She finally turned her head toward him, and he saw her face clearly for the first time. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin, eyes that were unfocused, glassy, expensive makeup smudged at the edges. She looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom, not stumbling drunk in a warehouse parking lot at midnight. "I'm fine," she muttered, reaching for the keys. Her words slurred together. "Give those back." Ryan held them out of reach. "You're not fine. You're drunk." "I'm not." She swayed, grabbed the car door for balance. "I just need to get home." "Not like this." Ryan glanced around the empty lot. No one else, no cabs, no rideshare drivers cruising by, just rain and darkness. "Where do you live?" She blinked at him, confusion flickering across her face. "What?" "Your address. Where's home?" "I don't—" She shook her head, trying to clear it. "I don't know you." "No, you don't. But I'm not letting you drive like this." Ryan pulled out his phone. "I can call you a cab, or I can give you a ride. Your choice." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then something in her expression shifted. Exhaustion, maybe, or resignation. "You'd do that?" "Yeah, I would." She laughed, a bitter sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Why?" Ryan didn't have a good answer for that. Maybe it was because he'd spent too many nights alone, wishing someone had cared enough to check. Maybe it was because he had a daughter at home, and he hoped if she ever needed help, someone would stop. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. She studied him for another beat, then nodded slowly. "Okay." "Okay." Ryan gestured toward his truck. "Come on." She took a step, stumbled again, and this time Ryan caught her elbow to steady her. She flinched at the contact but didn't pull away. Together they made their slow way across the parking lot. The rain pounded against them, soaking through Ryan's jacket and plastering his hair to his forehead. The woman didn't say anything, just focused on putting one foot in front of the other. When they reached the truck, Ryan opened the passenger door and helped her inside. She sank into the seat with a shaky exhale, closing her eyes. Ryan shut the door and jogged around to the driver's side, climbing in and shaking water from his hair. The cab smelled like old coffee and Emma's crayons. He started the engine, cranked the heat, and glanced over at his passenger. "Address?" he prompted. She rattled off a street name in a part of town Ryan had only driven through once. Expensive houses, tall gates, perfectly manicured lawns. The kind of place where people like him didn't belong. Got it. He put the truck in gear and pulled out of the lot. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. The rain drummed against the windshield, the wipers working overtime to clear the glass. Ryan kept his eyes on the road, but he could feel her watching him from the corner of his eye. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. "Ryan. Ryan." She repeated it slowly, like she was testing the weight of it. "I'm Victoria." "Nice to meet you, Victoria." Another silence, then, "You work at the warehouse?" "Yeah, night shift." "That's why you were still there." "Yeah." "Do you like it?" Ryan shrugged. "It pays the bills." Victoria let out a soft, humorless laugh. "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I've got." She didn't press further. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the window, watching the blurred lights of the city slide past. Ryan couldn't tell if she was thinking or just trying not to be sick. After a while, she spoke again, quieter this time. "I had a bad day." Ryan nodded. Figured. "A really bad day. I'm sorry." "Are you?" She glanced back at him, something sharp in her tone. "You don't know me." "Don't have to. Bad days suck for everyone." Victoria stared at him for a moment, then looked away. "Yeah, they do." The conversation lapsed again. Ryan focused on the road, navigating through streets that grew progressively cleaner, quieter, more expensive. The houses here didn't have chain-link fences or peeling paint. They had stone walls and wrought iron gates and security cameras perched on every corner. "Turn here," Victoria said, pointing to a long driveway lined with tall trees. Ryan slowed and turned in, his headlights sweeping over a sprawling two-story house at the end of the drive. It was the kind of place he'd only seen in magazines. Sleek modern lines, huge windows glowing with warm light, a perfectly landscaped front yard. "This is you?" Ryan asked, though the answer was obvious. "This is me." Victoria's voice was flat, empty. Ryan pulled up to the front entrance and put the truck in park. He expected her to get out immediately, but she didn't move, just sat there, staring at the house like it was a prison instead of a mansion. "You gonna be okay?" Ryan asked. Victoria didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "I don't know." Before Ryan could respond, the front door of the house opened. A man stepped out onto the porch, tall, mid-40s, with dark hair and a tailored suit that probably cost more than Ryan's truck. He walked down the steps with measured, deliberate steps, his expression unreadable. Ryan tensed. This was probably Victoria's husband. And judging by the way the man's eyes locked onto him through the windshield, he wasn't thrilled about a stranger bringing his wife home. Victoria finally moved, fumbling with the door handle. "I should go." "Yeah." Ryan reached across to help her with the door, but she managed to get it open on her own. She climbed out, unsteady but upright, and turned back to him. "Thank you," she said, and for the first time that night her voice sounded almost sincere. "Take care of yourself," Ryan replied. She nodded, then shut the door and started toward the house. The man on the porch watched her approach, then shifted his gaze back to Ryan. And that's when something strange happened. The man smiled. Not a polite smile, not a grateful smile, a knowing smile. The kind of smile that made Ryan's stomach twist with unease. Ryan put the truck in reverse, ready to leave, but the man raised a hand. "Wait." Then he started walking toward the truck. Ryan's pulse kicked up. He glanced at Victoria, who had stopped halfway to the door, looking back with confusion. The man ignored her and kept coming, his shoes splashing through puddles as he crossed the driveway. Ryan rolled down the window, keeping his hand near the gear shift. "Look, I was just giving her a ride. She wasn't in any condition to drive." The man stopped a few feet from the truck, hands in his pockets, still wearing that unsettling smile. "I know." "Okay, so Ryan Cole." Ryan froze. The man's smile widened. "That's your name, isn't it?" Ryan's mouth went dry. "How do you know my name?" "Because I've been looking for you." The words hung in the air like a threat. Ryan's mind raced. He'd never seen this man before in his life. Didn't know him money, didn't have any enemies that he knew of. But the way the man was looking at him, calm, patient, satisfied, made it clear this wasn't a coincidence. "Who are you?" Ryan demanded. "Marcus Hayes." The man took a step closer. "And I think you should come inside." "I don't think so." "Please." Marcus's tone didn't change, still calm, still certain. "Just for a few minutes. I promise. It'll be worth your time." Ryan looked past him toward Victoria, who was now standing on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching the exchange with wide, confused eyes. She didn't look like she knew what was happening either. "I have to get home," Ryan said. "My daughter's waiting." "I know about Emma," Marcus said. Ryan's blood went cold. "What did you just say?" "Emma, 6 years old, takes art classes on Thursdays, loves mac and cheese." Marcus tilted his head. "You're a good father, Ryan. I respect that." Ryan's hand moved to the door handle. "If you go anywhere near my daughter—" "I'm not threatening you." Marcus raised both hands, palms out. "I'm asking for your help." "Help with what?" "Something only you can do." Marcus's expression shifted, just slightly. The confidence cracked, and for a moment Ryan saw something raw underneath, desperation. "Please, just 10 minutes, then you can leave." Ryan wanted to drive away. Every instinct told him to get the hell out of there and never look back. But Marcus's words kept echoing in his head. "I've been looking for you." How long had this man been watching him? What did he want? And why did Ryan feel like his entire life was about to change? Against his better judgment, Ryan killed the engine. 10 minutes, he said. Marcus nodded. "That's all I need." Ryan climbed out of the truck, his legs stiff and his mind screaming at him to run. But he followed Marcus toward the house, past Victoria, who stared at him with something like apology in her eyes. Inside, the house was even more impressive. High ceilings, polished floors, modern art on the walls. It smelled like expensive candles and old money. Marcus led him through a hallway and into a study lined with bookshelves. A desk sat in the center, and on it was a single manila folder. Marcus gestured toward a chair. "Sit." Ryan didn't sit. "What do you want?" Marcus picked up the folder and held it out. "I want you to look at this." Ryan took it, flipped it open, and felt the ground drop out from under him. Inside were photographs. Not of Emma, not of his house, but of him. Years ago, younger, wearing a flight suit, standing in front of a helicopter. His call sign was stitched onto his chest. Cole. There were newspaper clippings, incident reports, medical records, all from the crash. Ryan's hands shook. "Where did you get this?" "I've been following your trail for months," Marcus said. "You disappeared after the accident. Changed your name, moved to a new city, took a job nobody would ever look for you in. You were good at covering your tracks, but not good enough." Ryan's voice came out as a rasp. "Why?" Marcus sat down on the edge of the desk, his expression grave. "Because I need a pilot. I'm not a pilot anymore. You were the best." Marcus tapped the folder. "Your record proves it. Before the crash, you flew rescue missions in conditions no one else would touch. Mountains, storms, war zones. You saved lives. That was a long time ago." "Not that long." Marcus leaned forward. "And the skills don't disappear, Ryan. You still have them." Ryan threw the folder onto the desk. "I'm done flying. I'm done with that life. Find someone else." "There is no one else." Marcus's voice sharpened. "I've looked. Every pilot I contacted either can't do it or won't risk it. You're the only one with the experience, the skill, and the guts to pull this off." "Pull what off?" Marcus hesitated just for a second. Then, "My sister is alive." Ryan blinked. "What?" "She was declared dead 3 years ago. Plane crash in the Andes. Everyone thought she was gone, but she's not." Marcus's voice cracked. "She's trapped, in a place no one can reach. No government will send a team. No private contractor will take the job." "But you could?" Ryan stared at him. "You're insane." "I'm desperate." Marcus stood. "And so is she. Even if I believed you, which I don't, I can't help you. I have a daughter. I have a life. I'm not throwing that away for some suicide mission." "I'll pay you." "I don't care about money." "Then do it because it's the right thing to do." Marcus's eyes burned. "You helped my wife tonight. A stranger. You didn't have to, but you did. Because it was right. This is the same thing. Someone needs help, someone who has no one else." Ryan turned toward the door. I'm leaving. Ryan. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. Marcus's voice was quiet now. The crash wasn't your fault. Ryan's chest tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. I do. Marcus crossed the room and stood behind him. I know you've spent 5 years blaming yourself. I know you think you failed, but you didn't. The report was wrong. Ryan's vision blurred. Stop. You did everything right, and you can do it again. Ryan yanked the door open and walked out, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. He didn't look at Victoria as he passed her in the hallway. Didn't look back as he strode out the front door and down the steps to his truck. But as he climbed inside and started the engine, his hands were still shaking, and Marcus's words wouldn't stop echoing in his head. The crash wasn't your fault. Someone needs help. You're the only one who can do it. Ryan pulled out of the driveway too fast, tires spitting gravel. The rain had eased to a drizzle, and the roads glistened under the streetlights. He drove on autopilot, his mind a mess of fragmented thoughts and memories he'd spent years trying to bury. He couldn't go back. Wouldn't. That part of his life was over, but even as he told himself that, he knew something had shifted. Marcus had found him, had dug up his past and laid it out like evidence at a trial. And worse, Marcus had looked him in the eye and said the one thing Ryan had never let himself believe. It wasn't your fault. Ryan gripped the steering wheel harder, his knuckles white. He thought about Emma, about the routine they'd built together, breakfast before school, homework at the kitchen table, stories before bed. It was simple, safe. Everything flying had never been. But it was also small, contained. A life designed to keep the past from catching up. And now it had. By the time Ryan pulled into his apartment complex, the rain had stopped completely. The building was quiet, most of the windows dark. He parked in his usual spot and sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Emma's asleep, doors unlocked. See you tomorrow. Ryan texted back a thank you, then climbed out of the truck and headed upstairs. Inside the apartment, Mrs. Chen was dozing on the couch, the TV playing softly. She woke when Ryan came in, blinking and sitting up. Sorry, Ryan said quietly. Didn't mean to wake you. It's fine. She stood, gathering her purse. Emma was good, finished her homework, had dinner, went to bed on time. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Mrs. Chen paused at the door, studying him. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Ryan forced a smile. Long night. I'm fine. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Get some rest. You too. After she left, Ryan locked the door and stood in the dim living room, listening to the silence. He should go to bed. He had another shift tomorrow. But instead, he walked down the hall to Emma's room. The door was cracked open, and he pushed it gently. Emma was curled up under her blanket, her dark hair spread across the pillow. A stuffed rabbit was tucked under one arm. On the wall above her bed, she'd hung a drawing she'd made at school. A stick figure family. Just the two of them, dad and daughter. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, watching her sleep. This was what mattered. This was his life now. Not helicopters, not rescue missions, not the past. But Marcus's voice kept creeping back in. My sister is alive. Someone needs help. You're the only one who can do it. Ryan turned away and walked back to the living room. He sank onto the couch, rubbing his face with both hands. It didn't make sense. None of it. How had Marcus even found him? Ryan had been careful. He'd left the military, changed his name legally, moved halfway across the country. He'd taken a job that required no references, no background checks. He'd kept his head down. And yet Marcus had tracked him down, had known his daughter's name, had compiled a file on him. Ryan's phone sat on the coffee table. He stared at it, debating. Then he picked it up and opened the browser. He typed in Marcus Hayes. The results came up immediately. Marcus wasn't hard to find. He was a tech executive, CEO of some consulting firm. Rich, connected. The kind of person who could hire investigators, pull strings, make things happen. Ryan scrolled through articles, awards, interviews, charity events. Nothing about a sister, nothing about a crash. He tried a different search. Hayes plane crash Andes. This time, something came up. An old news article from 3 years ago. Small, buried in the back pages. Private plane crash in Andes Mountains claims 2 lives. Ryan clicked it. The article was short. A private aircraft had gone down in a remote region of the Andes during a storm. 2 passengers confirmed dead. Recovery efforts had been called off due to dangerous terrain. The victims were named Sarah Hayes, 38, and pilot Thomas Grant, 45. Sarah Hayes, Marcus's sister. Ryan sat back, his mind racing. So it was true, or at least the crash was real. But Marcus believed she was still alive, trapped somewhere, and he wanted Ryan to find her. Ryan closed the browser and set the phone down. It was crazy. Even if Sarah Hayes had somehow survived the crash, the chances of her still being alive 3 years later were basically 0. And even if she was, how the hell was Ryan supposed to reach her? He didn't have a helicopter, didn't have equipment, didn't even have a pilot's license anymore. He'd let it expire after the accident, deliberately, because he'd never wanted to fly again. Ryan leaned his head back against the couch and closed his eyes. He could still feel it. The sick lurch of the helicopter as it dropped, the scream of the alarms, the wind tearing at the rotors, and then the impact, metal crumpling, glass shattering, the world spinning. He'd walked away. His co-pilot hadn't. Ryan's hands curled into fists. He couldn't go back to that. Couldn't put himself through it again. And he sure as hell wasn't going to risk leaving Emma without a father. But even as he thought it, another part of him, the part he'd tried to kill, whispered back. What if she's alive? What if someone's out there waiting for help that's never going to come? Ryan opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. He didn't sleep that night. What? The next morning, Ryan went through the motions, made Emma breakfast, packed her lunch, walked her to the bus stop. She chattered the whole way about a school project, something involving poster board and glitter, and Ryan nodded and smiled in the right places. But his mind was somewhere else. When he got back to the apartment, he poured himself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. He should forget about it. Marcus was a stranger. His problems weren't Ryan's problems. But the folder kept haunting him. The photographs. The reports. And Marcus's face when he'd said, "She's alive." Ryan pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. He scrolled down to a name he hadn't called in years, David Ortiz, his old flight instructor. Ryan hesitated, then hit call. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. "Yeah? David, it's Ryan Cole." A pause. Then, "Holy shit. Ryan? Yeah. I thought you were dead, man. Or at least off the grid." "I was. Kind of still am." "So why are you calling?" Ryan took a breath. "I need to ask you something." "Shoot." "If someone went down in the Andes 3 years ago, remote area, bad terrain, what are the chances they survived?" Another pause, longer this time. "Are we talking hypothetically, or is this real?" "Real." David let out a low whistle. "Depends on a lot of things. Injuries, shelter, water, food. But 3 years? That's a long time, man. Even if they made it through the crash, the odds aren't good. But it's possible. Possible, sure, people have survived worse. But you'd need someone who knew how to stay alive. And you'd need a hell of a lot of luck." Ryan nodded, even though David couldn't see him. "Okay. Thanks." "Ryan, what's this about?" "Just something I'm looking into." "You thinking about flying again?" Ryan's grip tightened on the phone. "No." "Good. Because that crash fucked you up. And I don't mean the physical part." "I know." "Do you?" David's voice softened. "Look, man, I get it. You want to help. That's who you are. But you can't save everyone. You learned that the hard way." Ryan closed his eyes. "Yeah, I did. So don't go chasing ghosts." "I won't." They said goodbye and Ryan ended the call. But he didn't put the phone down. Instead, he pulled up Marcus's number. He'd saved it from the call log and stared at it. He could walk away. Pretend last night never happened. Go to work, come home, take care of Emma. Live the life he'd built. Or he could make the call. Ryan's thumb hovered over the screen, and then before he could talk himself out of it, he pressed dial. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Ryan." "I'm not saying yes," Ryan said quickly, "but I want more information." "Of course." Marcus's voice was steady, controlled. "When can you meet?" "Tonight, after my shift. I'll send you an address. Not your house. Understood. Somewhere neutral. Ryan exhaled. Fine. Thank you, Ryan. Don't thank me yet. I haven't agreed to anything. I know, but you called. That's enough. Ryan hung up and set the phone on the table. His hands were shaking again. That night, Ryan met Marcus at a diner on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that served greasy burgers and weak coffee, where nobody asked questions. Ryan arrived first and took a booth in the back. Marcus showed up 10 minutes later looking out of place in his expensive coat. He slid into the seat across from Ryan and set a briefcase on the table. Thanks for coming, Marcus said. Ryan didn't waste time. Tell me everything. Marcus opened the briefcase and pulled out a map. He spread it across the table and Ryan saw a section of the Andes highlighted in red. This is where the plane went down, Marcus said, tapping the marked area. Remote. High altitude. No roads. The official recovery team gave up after 2 days. Why? Weather, terrain. They said it was too dangerous. Marcus's jaw tightened. They said there was no point. Everyone on board was dead. But you don't think so. I know so. Marcus pulled out another document, a satellite image. He pointed to a cluster of pixels near the crash site. This was taken 6 months ago. Look. Ryan leaned in. The image was grainy, but he could make out what looked like a shelter, crude, makeshift, but deliberate. Could be anything, Ryan said. It could, but 2 weeks ago, I got this. Marcus handed him a photograph. It was blurry, taken from a distance, but it showed a figure standing near the shelter. Small. Human. Ryan's pulse quickened. How did you get this? I hired a team to fly over the area. They couldn't land. Too risky, but they got this shot. Ryan studied the photo. The figure was too far away to identify, but it was there, real. This doesn't prove it's your sister. No, but it proves someone's alive. Marcus looked him in the eye. And I'm not leaving her there. Ryan set the photo down. Even if I wanted to help, I don't have the resources. No helicopter, no equipment, no, I'll provide everything. Marcus's voice was firm. Helicopter, fuel, navigation, medical supplies, whatever you need. All you have to do is fly. It's not that simple. I know. Marcus leaned back. I know it's dangerous. I know it's asking a lot. But you're the only person I trust to do this. You don't even know me. I know enough. Marcus gestured to the briefcase. I know you've saved 17 lives. I know you've flown in conditions that would have killed most pilots. I know you're a father who'd do anything for his daughter. He paused. And I know you still blame yourself for a crash that wasn't your fault. Ryan's throat tightened. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Marcus pulled out another file. The official report blamed mechanical failure, but the investigation was incomplete. They didn't look deep enough. I did. He slid the file across the table. Ryan opened it. Inside were technical schematics, maintenance logs, testimony from engineers. The rotor system had a defect, Marcus said. It was flagged months before your crash, but the contractor covered it up. You couldn't have known. You couldn't have stopped it. Ryan's vision blurred as he read. The words swam together, but the meaning was clear. It hadn't been his fault. He'd done everything right, and his co-pilot had died anyway. Ryan closed the file and pushed it back. This doesn't change anything. Doesn't it? Marcus's voice was gentle. You've been carrying that weight for 5 years. You don't have to anymore. Ryan looked at him, then at the map, then at the photo of the figure in the mountains. Someone was out there, alone, waiting. And if Ryan walked away, they'd die. I need time to think, Ryan said. How much time? I don't know. Marcus nodded. Take what you need. But Ryan, every day we wait is another day she's out there. Ryan stood, his legs unsteady. I'll call you. Okay? Ryan left the diner and walked to his truck. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. And for the first time in 5 years, he let himself imagine it. Flying again. The roar of the engine, the pull of the controls, the rush of altitude, the fear, but also the purpose. Ryan closed his eyes and saw Emma's face. Then he saw the figure in the photograph, alone, waiting. He started the engine and drove home. And deep down, in a place he'd tried to bury, he already knew what his answer would be. 3 days passed before Ryan called Marcus back. 3 days of going through the motions: work, Emma, sleep, repeat, while his mind turned over the same questions again and again. Could he do it? Should he do it? What would happen to Emma if something went wrong? On the third night after Emma was asleep, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with a beer he wasn't drinking and stared at his phone. He'd already made the decision. He just hadn't admitted it yet. Finally, he picked up the phone and dialed. Marcus answered immediately. "Ryan, I need to see the helicopter first," Ryan said. "And I need to know exactly what you're asking me to do. No more vague answers. Everything." "Of course. When?" "Tomorrow morning. I'll send you the address." Ryan ended the call and sat back, his heart hammering. He'd crossed a line. Once he saw the helicopter, once he heard the full plan, there'd be no pretending this wasn't real. The next morning, Ryan told Mrs. Chen he had an appointment and asked if she could watch Emma for a few hours. She agreed without questions, and Ryan drove across town to an address Marcus had texted him, a private airfield on the outskirts of the city. The gate was open when he arrived. Ryan pulled through and followed a gravel road to a cluster of hangars. Marcus was standing outside the largest one, hands in his pockets, watching Ryan's truck approach. Ryan parked and climbed out. The air smelled like fuel and cut grass. In the distance, he could hear the hum of a small plane taking off. "Thanks for coming," Marcus said. Ryan didn't answer. He just walked past Marcus toward the hangar. Inside, the space was enormous. High ceilings, concrete floors, tools and equipment stacked along the walls. And in the center, under bright overhead lights, sat a helicopter. Ryan stopped in his tracks. It was a Bell 407, sleek, powerful, designed for utility and rescue operations. The kind of aircraft Ryan had flown dozens of times before the crash. The rotors gleamed, the paint was fresh, everything about it looked ready to fly. Ryan's chest tightened. Marcus came up beside him. "I bought it 2 months ago, had it fully serviced, new avionics, upgraded navigation, reinforced landing gear. It's in perfect condition." Ryan walked closer, running his hand along the fuselage. The metal was cool under his palm. Familiar. It had been 5 years since he'd touched a helicopter, but his body remembered. The weight of it. The balance. The way it felt to sit in the cockpit and feel the machine respond to every movement. "You've been planning this for a while," Ryan said quietly. "Yes." "And if I'd said no?" Marcus hesitated. "I would have kept looking." Ryan circled the helicopter slowly, inspecting every detail. The rotors, the tail, the fuel tanks. It was beautiful and terrifying. "Tell me the plan," Ryan said. "All of it." Marcus pulled out a tablet and brought up a map. "The crash site is here." He pointed to a red marker in the Andes. "High altitude, approximately 14,000 feet. The terrain is unstable, avalanches, rock slides, shifting ice. The weather is unpredictable. Storms roll in fast and stay for days." "Sounds great," Ryan muttered. Marcus ignored the sarcasm. "The nearest airstrip that can handle this helicopter is here." He tapped another marker, about 50 miles from the crash site. "We fly there first, refuel, then make the approach. What's the window?" "For weather? Narrow, maybe 6 hours of clear conditions every few days, sometimes less." Ryan shook his head. "That's not enough time. If we get caught in a storm, we won't. You can't guarantee that." "No, but I've hired a meteorologist. She's been tracking the patterns for weeks. She'll tell us when it's safe." Ryan studied the map. The crash site was surrounded by peaks, narrow valleys, and sheer cliffs. Landing would be nearly impossible. And if something went wrong, if the weather turned, if the helicopter failed, if they couldn't find the shelter, they'd be stranded. "What about extraction?" Ryan asked. "Even if we find your sister, getting her out won't be easy. She's been up there for 3 years. She'll be weak, maybe injured. We'd need medical equipment, a stretcher, maybe more than one trip." "I've thought of that." Marcus swiped to another screen. "We bring a field medic, someone who can stabilize her on site. And we pack light, just the essentials. One trip, in and out." "And if she can't walk?" "We carry her." Ryan looked at Marcus. "You're coming?" "Yes." "Have you ever flown before? In conditions like this?" "No. But I'm not asking you to do this alone." Ryan turned back to the helicopter. His hands were shaking again. He shoved them into his pockets. I need to think about this, he said. Ryan, I said I need to think. Marcus went quiet, then, okay. Ryan walked out of the hangar without another word. He climbed into his truck, started the engine, and sat there for a long moment, staring at the helicopter through the windshield. It would be so easy to say yes, to let himself believe he could do this, that he could be that person again. The pilot who didn't hesitate, who flew into danger because someone needed help. But that person had gotten his co-pilot killed. Ryan drove home and spent the rest of the day trying to focus on normal things. He picked Emma up from school. They went to the park. She showed him a drawing she'd made, a picture of the two of them holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Do you like it, Dad? She asked. Ryan smiled. I love it. Can we put it on the fridge? Absolutely. That night, after Emma went to bed, Ryan sat on the couch and pulled out the file Marcus had given him, the one with the investigation into the crash. He'd read it a dozen times already, but he read it again. The technical reports, the witness statements, the conclusion, mechanical failure, not pilot error. Ryan closed the file and leaned his head back. He'd spent 5 years believing he'd failed, that he'd missed something, that if he'd been better, faster, smarter, his co-pilot would still be alive. But he hadn't missed anything. The system had failed, and Ryan had been blamed anyway. He thought about Marcus's sister, about the figure in the photograph. Alone, waiting. If Ryan didn't go, she'd die. If he did go, he might die too. But at least he'd have tried. Ryan pulled out his phone and called Marcus. I'm in, he said. Marcus exhaled, relief flooding his voice. Thank you. But I have conditions. Name them. I need 2 weeks to prepare. I need to get my flight hours back up. I need to test the helicopter myself. And I need to make sure Emma's taken care of if something happens to me. Done. Anything else? Ryan hesitated. If we get up there and it's too dangerous, I'm calling it off. No arguments. Agreed. And if we find her and she's already gone, we bring her home anyway, Marcus said quietly. Ryan nodded, even though Marcus couldn't see him. Okay, I'll set everything up. We'll start training tomorrow. Ryan ended the call and sat in the silence of his apartment. He'd just agreed to fly into one of the most dangerous places on Earth to rescue someone who might already be dead, and he had no idea if he'd make it back. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Ryan quit his job at the warehouse. Marcus offered to pay him enough that he wouldn't need it, and spent every day at the airfield. Marcus had hired an instructor, a retired military pilot named Graves, who didn't ask questions and didn't waste time. You're rusty, Graves said on the first day, watching Ryan run through the pre-flight checks. But you remember the basics. That's more than most. Ryan climbed into the cockpit, and the moment he wrapped his hands around the controls, something inside him shifted. The fear was still there, sharp and cold in his chest, but so was the muscle memory. The instinct. Start her up, Graves said. Ryan flipped the switches. The engine roared to life, and the rotors began to spin. The whole helicopter vibrated beneath him, alive and powerful. Take her up, Graves ordered. Just a hover. Let's see what you've got. Ryan pulled the collective, and the helicopter lifted off the ground. Slowly, shakily. But it lifted. Graves didn't smile, but his voice softened. Good. Now hold it steady. Ryan did. And for the first time in 5 years, he felt like a pilot again. Over the next week, Graves pushed him hard. Hovering drills, navigation exercises, emergency procedures. Ryan's hands blistered. His back ached, but he didn't stop. At night, he went home to Emma and tried to pretend everything was normal. He helped her with homework, made her dinner, read her stories before bed. But the whole time, a part of him was already in the mountains, preparing for what was coming. One evening, Emma looked up from her coloring book and asked, Dad, are you going somewhere? Ryan froze. What makes you think that? You've been acting weird. Weird how? She shrugged. I don't know, just different. Ryan set down the dish he was washing and sat beside her at the table. I might have to go on a trip soon, just for a few days. Emma's face fell. Where? I can't really explain right now, but it's important. More important than me? The words hit him like a punch. No, nothing's more important than you. Then why do you have to go? Ryan didn't know how to answer that. How could he explain that someone else needed help? That if he didn't go, they'd die? Emma was 6. She wouldn't understand. Because sometimes people need help, he said finally, and I'm one of the only people who can help them. Emma frowned. But what if something happens to you? Nothing's going to happen to me. You promise? Ryan hesitated. He wanted to promise, wanted to tell her he'd be fine, that he'd come home safe, but he couldn't lie to her. I'm going to do everything I can to come back, he said. But if something does happen, Mrs. Chen will take care of you, and you'll be okay. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to go. Ryan pulled her into his arms. I know, sweetheart, I know. She cried into his shoulder and Ryan held her, his own throat tight. He hated this. Hated that he was putting her through it, but he couldn't walk away now, not when someone's life was on the line. The day before the flight, Marcus called Ryan to the airfield for a final briefing. When Ryan arrived, Marcus wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing cargo pants and a jacket covered in patches. Ryan, this is Dr. Ellison, Marcus said. She's the medic. Ryan shook her hand. You know what you're getting into? I do, Ellison said. Her grip was firm. I've worked high-altitude rescues before. Not this high, but close enough. And you're okay with this? I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. Ryan nodded. He liked her already. No bullshit. Just straight answers. Marcus spread the map across the table. We leave tomorrow at dawn. Weather window opens at 8 a.m. We'll have approximately 4 hours of clear conditions. That's enough time to fly in, locate the shelter, extract Sarah, and get out. And if it takes longer? Ryan asked. It won't. But if it does, Marcus met his eyes. Then we adapt. Ryan didn't like that answer, but he didn't have a better one. Ellison leaned over the map. What's the plan if she's injured? Hypothermia? Frostbite? Broken bones? We stabilize her as much as we can and move fast, Marcus said. I've packed medical supplies. Thermal blankets, oxygen, whatever you need. Good, Ellison straightened. But I need to be clear about something. If she's been up there for 3 years, she's not going to be in good shape. Best case, she's malnourished and dehydrated. Worst case, I know, Marcus said quietly. Ellison looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Ryan studied the map one more time. The crash site, the shelter, the narrow window of time. It was a long shot, a dangerous long shot, but it was the only shot they had. We're really doing this, Ryan said. Yeah, Marcus replied. We are. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario. What if the weather turned? What if they couldn't find the shelter? What if Sarah was already dead? What if he failed again? At some point, he must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, his alarm was blaring. 4 a.m. Ryan shut it off and sat up, his heart already racing. Today was the day. He got dressed quietly, checked on Emma one last time. She was still asleep, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, and left the apartment. The drive to the airfield felt surreal. The streets were empty. The sky was still dark. Ryan's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was a storm. When he arrived, Marcus and Ellison were already there, loading supplies into the helicopter. Ryan parked and walked over. You ready? Marcus asked. Ryan looked at the helicopter, at the rotors, at the open sky beyond. Yeah, he said. Let's go. They finished loading in silence. Medical equipment, food, water, ropes, thermal gear, everything they'd need to survive if things went wrong. When they were done, Ryan climbed into the cockpit. Marcus took the co-pilot seat. Ellison strapped in behind them. Ryan ran through the pre-flight checks. Everything looked good. The engine hummed. The gauges were steady. The controls responded smoothly. He took a breath and keyed the radio. Tower, this is November 74 Alpha, requesting clearance for departure. The response crackled back. November 74 Alpha, you are cleared for departure. Winds are light. Good luck. Ryan didn't respond. He just pulled the collective and the helicopter lifted off the ground. The airfield fell away beneath them. The city lights blinked in the distance. And ahead, the sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hint of dawn. Ryan turned the helicopter south and pushed the throttle forward. They were going to the mountains. The flight to the refueling station took 3 hours. Ryan didn't talk much. He focused on the controls, on the horizon, on keeping the helicopter steady. Marcus sat beside him, staring out the window. Ellison checked her equipment in the back. By the time they landed at the small airstrip near the base of the Andes, the sun was fully up. The air was thin and cold. Ryan could see the mountains rising in the distance, massive, jagged, covered in snow. They refueled quickly. Ryan checked the weather report. Clear skies, light winds. The window was open. "This is it," Marcus said. Ryan nodded. "This is it." They climbed back into the helicopter and took off again. This time the flight was harder. The altitude increased rapidly. The air grew thinner. The helicopter struggled to maintain lift. Ryan pushed it harder, climbing toward the crash site. The mountains rose around them like walls. Sheer cliffs, deep valleys, ice and rock. Ryan had flown in difficult terrain before, but this was different. This was hostile. "There," Marcus said suddenly, pointing. Ryan looked. Ahead in a narrow valley between two peaks, he could see the wreckage. The tail of the plane jutted out from the snow, debris scattered across the slope, and just beyond it, a small crude shelter made of metal and fabric. Ryan's pulse spiked. "I see it." He circled once, looking for a place to land. The valley was narrow, the ground was uneven, but there was a flat stretch near the shelter, just barely wide enough. "I'm going in," Ryan said. "Be careful," Ellison warned. Ryan didn't answer. He just focused on the approach. The helicopter descended slowly, the rotors kicking up snow. The ground came up fast. Too fast. Ryan pulled back on the collective, slowing the descent. The skids touched down. The helicopter rocked, then settled. They were down. Ryan killed the engine and the rotors slowed to a stop. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marcus unbuckled and opened the door. The cold hit them like a wall. Ryan climbed out, his breath fogging in the thin air. Ellison grabbed her medical bag and followed. The shelter was about 50 yards away. Ryan started toward it, his boots crunching through the snow. As they got closer, he could see it more clearly. It was makeshift. Pieces of the plane's fuselage, fabric stretched across a frame, rocks piled around the base for insulation. Smoke rose from a small vent at the top. Someone was inside. Marcus broke into a run. "Sarah!" Ryan followed, his heart pounding. Marcus reached the shelter first and pulled back the fabric door. And there, huddled inside, wrapped in blankets, was a woman. She looked up, her face gaunt and pale, her eyes wide with shock. "Marcus?" she whispered. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. I'm here. Shh." Sarah started crying. "You found me." "Yeah." Marcus's voice broke. "I found you." Ellison pushed past them and knelt beside Sarah, pulling out a stethoscope. "Let me check her." Ryan stood in the doorway, watching. Sarah was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. But as Ellison worked, her expression grew more serious. "She's severely malnourished," Ellison said. "Dehydrated. Possible frostbite on her fingers and toes. We need to get her out of here now." "Can she walk?" Ryan asked. Ellison looked at Sarah. "Can you stand?" Sarah tried. She got halfway up, then collapsed back onto the blankets, gasping. "No," Ellison said. "We'll have to carry her." Marcus didn't hesitate. He scooped Sarah into his arms, blankets and all. "Let's go." Ryan turned and led the way back to the helicopter. But as they walked, he felt it, a shift in the air, a change in the wind. He looked up. The sky, which had been clear just minutes ago, was darkening, clouds rolling in fast from the west. "Shit," Ryan muttered. "What?" Marcus called. "Storm's coming. We need to move." They ran. Marcus carried Sarah. Ellison stayed close. Ryan reached the helicopter first and yanked open the door. "Get her inside," he ordered. Marcus climbed in and laid Sarah across the back seat. Ellison secured her with straps and started an IV. Ryan jumped into the cockpit and fired up the engine. The rotors spun. The helicopter shuddered, and then the storm hit. Wind slammed into them from the side. Snow whipped across the windshield. Ryan gripped the controls and pulled the collective. The helicopter lifted, barely. The wind pushed them sideways. Ryan corrected, fighting to keep them level. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on." The helicopter climbed, slowly. The valley walls rose on either side. The storm roared around them, and Ryan flew. The helicopter shook violently as another gust slammed into them. Ryan's knuckles were white on the controls, every muscle in his body locked tight as he fought to keep them airborne. The altimeter was climbing, but too slowly. The valley walls loomed on either side, jagged peaks disappearing into the storm clouds above. "Ryan, talk to me," Marcus shouted over the roar of the wind. "I'm trying to get us over the ridge," Ryan yelled back. His eyes were fixed on the instruments, on the narrow gap between the mountains ahead. "Hold on." The wind hit them again, harder this time, and the helicopter tilted sharply to the left. Ryan compensated, pulling the cyclic right, but the aircraft felt sluggish, heavy. The thin air at this altitude meant less lift, and with the added weight of 4 people and supplies, they were pushing the limits of what the helicopter could do. In the back, Ellison was braced against the seat, one hand on Sarah's arm, the other gripping the IV bag. "Her pulse is weak," she called out. "We need to get her to lower altitude fast." "Working on it," Ryan muttered through gritted teeth. Sarah's eyes were closed, her face ghostly pale against the dark blankets. Marcus had turned in his seat, one hand reaching back toward his sister, but there was nothing he could do except watch. The ridge was coming up fast. Too fast. Ryan could barely see it through the swirling snow, but the radar showed the gap narrowing. He pulled the collective up, demanding more altitude, and the helicopter groaned in protest. "Come on, you piece of shit," Ryan whispered. "Just a little more." The engine whined. The rotors bit into the thin air, and inch by inch, they climbed. The valley walls blurred past on either side. Ryan could see rock faces so close he could have reached out and touched them. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to find another way. But there was no other way. This was the only route out. And then they were through. The helicopter burst over the ridge, and suddenly the valley opened up below them. The storm was still raging, but they had clearance now, room to maneuver. Ryan exhaled, his hands still shaking. "We're clear." Marcus slumped forward, his head in his hands. "Jesus Christ." Don't celebrate yet," Ellison said sharply. "She's going into shock. I need to get her warm and stable, but I can't do that up here." Ryan was already adjusting course, angling the helicopter down toward lower altitude. 20 minutes to the airstrip. Can she make it?" Ellison didn't answer right away. She was checking Sarah's vitals, her expression tense. "I don't know, maybe. Keep this thing steady." Ryan focused on flying. The storm began to thin as they descended, the visibility improving. The mountains gave way to foothills, then to the flat expanse of the high desert. The airstrip appeared ahead, a thin ribbon of asphalt in the middle of nowhere. Ryan brought the helicopter in fast, touching down harder than he would have liked. The skids hit with a jolt, but they were down. He killed the engine immediately. "Get her out," he ordered. Marcus was already moving. He unbuckled and climbed into the back, lifting Sarah as gently as he could. Ellison grabbed her medical bag and followed him out. Ryan jumped down from the cockpit and looked around. The airstrip had a small building, little more than a shed with a radio, and a fuel pump. No ambulance, no medical facility. "There's supposed to be a truck here," Marcus said, his voice tight with panic. "I arranged for transport. There." Ryan pointed to a dusty pickup barreling down the access road, kicking up a plume of dirt behind it. The truck skidded to a stop, and a man in his 50s jumped out. He took one look at Sarah and ran to open the tailgate. "Get her in the back. There's blankets." Marcus laid Sarah down carefully, and Ellison climbed in beside her, already working to stabilize her further. The man slammed the tailgate shut and turned to Marcus. "Hospital's 2 hours south. I'll drive fast." "Go," Marcus said. Then he looked at Ellison. "Stay with her." Ellison nodded. "I will." The truck tore off down the road, leaving Ryan and Marcus standing in the dust and silence. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind whistled across the empty airstrip. The helicopter sat behind them, still ticking as the engine cooled. Marcus turned to Ryan. His face was drawn, exhausted, but his eyes were bright with something Ryan couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe. Or disbelief. "You did it," Marcus said quietly. Ryan shook his head. "We're not done yet. She's not out of the woods. But she's alive. Because of you." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He walked over to the helicopter and ran a hand along the fuselage, checking for damage. The metal was cold under his palm, and he could feel the faint vibration of stress in the frame. They'd pushed this aircraft to its limits, and then some. Marcus followed him. I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything, Ryan said. I just did what needed to be done. That's not true. Marcus's voice was firm. You didn't have to help. You had every reason to say no, but you didn't, and Sarah's alive because you chose to fly again. Ryan stopped and looked at him. Your sister better make it. She will. Marcus said it like a promise, like he could will it into being. Ryan wanted to believe him, but he'd seen too much death to take survival for granted. They waited at the airstrip for 3 hours. Marcus paced. Ryan sat on the edge of the helicopter's skid and stared at the horizon. Neither of them talked much. There wasn't anything to say. Finally, Marcus's phone rang. He answered immediately. Yes? Ryan watched his face, saw the tension drain out of it. She's stable, Marcus said, his voice cracking. They got her temperature up. They're giving her fluids and oxygen. Ellison says she's going to make it. Ryan closed his eyes and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Thank you, Marcus said into the phone. Then he hung up and looked at Ryan. She's going to make it. Ryan nodded. Good. Marcus walked over and sat down beside him on the skid. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower toward the mountains. What happens now? Ryan asked. I take her home, get her the care she needs, help her rebuild her life. Marcus paused. What about you? Ryan didn't answer right away. He thought about Emma, about the apartment, about the life he'd built that had felt so small just 2 weeks ago. I go back, he said finally. Back to my daughter. Back to normal. Is that what you want? Ryan looked at him. I don't know. Marcus nodded slowly. Fair enough. They flew back to the city the next day. The return trip was uneventful. Clear skies, calm winds. Ryan landed at the airfield just after sunset, and Marcus arranged for a car to take him home. When Ryan walked into his apartment, Mrs. Chen was on the couch with Emma, watching a movie. Emma's face lit up when she saw him. Dad! She jumped up and ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. Ryan hugged her tight, burying his face in her hair. Hey, sweetheart. You came back. Of course I did. Mrs. Chen stood and gathered her things. She was very brave, she said quietly, but she missed you. Thanks for staying with her. After Mrs. Chen left, Ryan sat on the couch with Emma curled up beside him. She didn't ask where he'd been, didn't ask what he'd done. She just held on to him like she was afraid he'd disappear again. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan stood in the kitchen and stared at his phone. Marcus had sent him a message earlier. Sarah's asking about you. She wants to meet the man who saved her life. Ryan set the phone down without replying. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who'd gotten lucky. Someone who'd flown into a storm and come out the other side by sheer chance. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't stop thinking about the moment the helicopter had lifted off the valley floor. The way the controls had felt in his hands. The way his body had remembered what to do, even when his mind was screaming at him to turn back. He'd been afraid, terrified even. But he'd flown anyway. A week passed. Ryan tried to slip back into his old routine, but it didn't fit anymore. He looked for work, but nothing felt right. He took Emma to school, helped with homework, made dinner. But the whole time, a part of him was somewhere else. In the mountains, in the cockpit, in the sky. Marcus called him twice. The first time, Ryan let it go to voicemail. The second time, he answered. How are you? Marcus asked. Fine. Liar. Ryan almost smiled. How's Sarah? Better. Stronger every day. The doctors say she'll make a full recovery. Physically, at least. And mentally? Marcus was quiet for a moment. That'll take longer. 3 years alone in the mountains does things to a person. But she's tough. She'll get through it. Good. Ryan, she really does want to meet you. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because I don't need thanks. I don't need gratitude. I just need to move on. Move on to what? Marcus's voice was gentle. You quit your job. You're avoiding my calls. Emma told Victoria you've been distracted. Ryan froze. You talked to Emma? Victoria did. She stopped by to check on you. Emma answered the door. You had no right. I had every right. You saved my sister's life. That makes you family, whether you like it or not. Ryan hung up. But the next day, Victoria showed up at his apartment. Ryan saw her through the peephole and considered not answering, but she knocked again, persistent, and finally he opened the door. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood there for an awkward moment. Victoria looked different than she had that night in the rain, sober, composed, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of a designer coat. But her eyes were the same, sharp, searching. "Can I come in?" she asked. Ryan hesitated, then stepped aside. Victoria walked into the small living room and looked around. Her gaze landed on Emma's drawings taped to the walls, the stack of library books on the coffee table, the worn couch. "Nice place," she said. "No, it's not." She smiled faintly. "Okay, it's not, but it's home." Ryan crossed his arms. "Why are you here?" "Because Marcus is worried about you, and so am I." "I'm fine." "You keep saying that, but I don't think you believe it." Ryan looked away. "I don't need therapy from a stranger. I'm not a stranger. You saved me too, remember?" "That was different." "How?" Ryan didn't have an answer for that. Victoria sat down on the couch, uninvited. "Can I tell you something? That night you drove me home, I was at the lowest point in my life. I just lost a major client. My marriage was falling apart. I felt like I was drowning and no one could see it." Ryan stayed silent. "And then you showed up," she continued. "This guy I didn't know who had no reason to care, and you helped me anyway. You didn't judge me, didn't ask for anything. You just did the right thing. That's what anyone would have done." "No, it's not." Victoria's voice was firm. "Most people would have kept walking, but you didn't, and that told me something about who you are." Ryan finally looked at her. "What's your point?" "My point is that you're someone who helps people. It's not just what you do, it's who you are. And trying to walk away from that is killing you." "I have a daughter to think about." "I know, but Emma doesn't need a father who's slowly dying inside. She needs a father who's alive." Ryan's throat tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." Victoria stood and walked to the door, but before she left, she turned back. "Sarah wants to meet you, not to thank you, not to make you feel like a hero, just to meet the person who gave her a second chance at life. Think about it." She left, and Ryan stood in the middle of his living room, feeling like the walls were closing in. That night, Emma asked him a question. "Dad, are you sad?" Ryan looked up from the dishes he was washing. "What makes you think that?" "You've been quiet and you don't smile as much." Ryan dried his hands and sat down beside her at the table. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just trying to figure some things out." "Like what?" "Like what I'm supposed to do next." Emma frowned. "You're supposed to take care of me." "I know, and I will, always." "Then why are you sad?" Ryan didn't know how to explain it. How could he tell a 6-year-old that he felt like he'd woken up from a long sleep and discovered he didn't recognize his own life? "Sometimes grown-ups get confused," he said finally, "even when they're doing the right things." Emma reached out and took his hand. "It's okay to be confused. Mrs. Chen says everyone gets confused sometimes." Ryan smiled despite himself. "Mrs. Chen is very smart." "She is." Emma squeezed his hand. "But you're smart too. You'll figure it out." Ryan hoped she was right. The next morning, he called Marcus. "Okay," Ryan said. "I'll meet her." Marcus didn't ask questions. He just gave Ryan an address, a rehabilitation center on the outskirts of the city. Ryan drove there the next afternoon. The building was modern, surrounded by trees and gardens. It looked more like a resort than a hospital. He checked in at the front desk, and a nurse led him down a quiet hallway to a room at the end. "She's expecting you," the nurse said, knocking lightly before opening the door. Inside, Sarah Hayes sat in a chair by the window. She was thin, too thin, and her hair had been cut short, but her eyes were clear, and when she saw Ryan, she smiled. "You must be Ryan," she said. Ryan stepped inside. "Yeah, that's me." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her. "Please, sit." Ryan sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ryan studied her face, looking for signs of the trauma she'd endured, but all he saw was a quiet strength. "I don't really know what to say," Ryan admitted. "You don't have to say anything." Sarah's voice was soft. "I just wanted to see you, to put a face to the person Marcus has been talking about nonstop. He talks about me? Constantly. You're basically a legend in this family now. Ryan shook his head. I'm not a legend. I'm just a guy who knows how to fly. A guy who flew into a storm to save someone he'd never met. Sarah leaned forward. That's not nothing. Ryan looked down at his hands. Your brother paid me. Money doesn't make you brave. Sarah paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really do it? And don't say it was just the money. Ryan hesitated. He thought about the folder Marcus had shown him. The crash. The report. The years of guilt. I needed to prove something to myself, he said finally. What? That I could still do it. That I wasn't broken. Sarah nodded slowly. And did you? Ryan met her eyes. I don't know yet. Well, for what it's worth, you proved something to me. Sarah's voice was steady. You proved that there are still people in the world who show up when it matters. And I won't forget that. Ryan felt something shift inside him. Not relief exactly, but something close to it. They talked for another hour. Sarah told him about the crash, about the first few days of survival, about the long months that followed. She didn't spare the details, the cold, the hunger, the fear that no one would ever come. There were days I wanted to give up, she admitted, days when it seemed easier to just let go. But I kept thinking about Marcus, about my parents, about everyone who thought I was dead, and I told myself I had to survive, just one more day, and then one more after that. That takes a different kind of strength, Ryan said. So does flying into a storm. Sarah smiled. I think we're both stronger than we give ourselves credit for. When Ryan left the rehab center, the sun was setting. He sat in his truck for a while, thinking about what Sarah had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was stronger than he thought. Or maybe he was just starting to figure out who he was supposed to be. He drove home, and when he walked through the door, Emma ran to him like she always did. And for the first time in weeks, Ryan felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. But as he made dinner and helped Emma with her homework, he couldn't stop thinking about the helicopter, about the feel of the controls in his hands, about the mountains and the sky and the way his heart had pounded when they cleared the ridge. He told himself he was done flying, that he'd go back to a normal life. But deep down he knew the truth. He wasn't done, not even close. 2 weeks after meeting Sarah, Ryan got a call that changed everything. He was at the grocery store with Emma, letting her pick out cereal when his phone rang. Marcus's name lit up the screen. Ryan answered. Yeah? I have a proposition for you, Marcus said without preamble. Ryan grabbed a box of cereal Emma was holding up and nodded his approval. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight? I have Emma. Bring her. Victoria and I are having dinner at the house. Sarah will be there too. It'll be casual. Ryan hesitated. The idea of bringing his daughter into Marcus's world felt wrong somehow, like mixing two parts of his life that should stay separate. Please, Marcus added. It's important. Fine. What time? 7. Ryan hung up and looked down at Emma, who was now comparing two different cereals with intense concentration. We're going to dinner tonight, he said. Emma looked up. Where? A friend's house. What friend? Ryan had never told Emma about the rescue, had never explained where he'd gone or what he'd done. She was too young to understand, and he hadn't wanted to scare her. Someone I helped out, he said vaguely. They want to say thank you. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She grabbed both boxes of cereal. Can I bring my sketchbook? Sure. That evening, Ryan drove them to Marcus's house. Emma sat in the passenger seat with her sketchbook on her lap, humming to herself. Ryan's hands were tight on the wheel. He still didn't know why Marcus wanted to see him, but something about the call had felt different, urgent. When they pulled up to the house, Victoria was waiting on the porch. She waved as they got out of the truck. You must be Emma, Victoria said, crouching down to Emma's level. I've heard so much about you. Emma hid halfway behind Ryan's leg. Hi. Come on inside. Sarah's been excited to meet you. They walked into the house, and Ryan was struck again by how different it was from his apartment. Everything here was clean, expensive, carefully arranged. Emma's eyes went wide as she looked around. Marcus appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Ryan. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Ryan glanced around. Where's Sarah? Living room. She's doing better, but she still tires easily. They walked through the house, and Ryan found Sarah sitting on a couch near the fireplace. She looked stronger than she had at the rehab center, more color in her face, more weight on her frame. When she saw Ryan, she smiled. You brought reinforcements, she said, nodding at Emma. This is my daughter, Emma. Sarah leaned forward, studying Emma with genuine interest. Hi, Emma. I'm Sarah. Your dad is pretty amazing, you know that? Emma glanced up at Ryan, then back at Sarah. I know. Everyone laughed, and some of the tension in Ryan's chest eased. Victoria served dinner, pasta, salad, bread. It was simple, but good. Emma sat between Ryan and Sarah, occasionally asking questions about the house or the paintings on the walls. Sarah answered each one patiently, and Ryan noticed how natural she was with kids, like she'd done this before. After dinner, Victoria took Emma to see the library upstairs. It has a whole section of art books, she'd said, and Emma had practically run after her. Once they were alone, Marcus poured 3 glasses of wine and sat down across from Ryan and Sarah. Okay, Ryan said. What's this about? Marcus set his glass down. I want to start a company, a private rescue operation. Ryan blinked. What? Hear me out. Marcus leaned forward. There are people like Sarah all over the world, people who've been written off, people in places too dangerous or too remote for traditional search and rescue, and no one's helping them because the risk is too high or the profit is too low. So you want to help them, Ryan said slowly. Yes, and I want you to lead it. Ryan stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Sarah spoke up. He's been planning this for weeks, Ryan, ever since we got back. Ryan shook his head. Marcus, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified to run a company. You don't have to run the business side. I'll handle that. You'd run operations, recruit pilots, train teams, decide which missions to take and how to execute them. Marcus's eyes were bright with conviction. You'd be doing what you're good at, what you were meant to do. I was meant to be a father. You can be both. Ryan stood up, suddenly needing space. He walked to the window and stared out at the dark yard. This is insane. You're talking about flying into war zones, disaster areas, mountains like the Andes. People die doing that kind of work. People die doing nothing too, Sarah said quietly. I almost did. Ryan turned to look at her. She met his gaze steadily. For 3 years I waited, she continued. I told myself someone would come, that someone would care enough to try. And then you did. You didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but you came anyway. She paused. How many other people are out there right now waiting for someone like you? Ryan's chest felt tight. I have a daughter to think about. I know. Marcus stood and walked over to him. And I'm not asking you to risk your life recklessly. We'd have protocols, safety measures, the best equipment money can buy, and you'd only take missions you felt confident about. There's no such thing as a safe rescue mission. No. But there's a difference between brave and stupid. And you're not stupid. Marcus put a hand on Ryan's shoulder. Look, I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Just think about it. Think about what you could do, who you could save. Ryan looked at Marcus, then at Sarah, then back out the window. His reflection stared back at him, tired, uncertain, trapped. I'll think about it, he said finally. Marcus nodded. That's all I'm asking. What? Victoria and Emma came back downstairs a few minutes later, Emma clutching a large art book Victoria had given her. They said their goodbyes and Ryan drove home in silence while Emma flipped through the book beside him. I like them, Emma said suddenly. Ryan glanced over. Yeah? Yeah. Sarah's nice, and Victoria showed me paintings by this lady named Frida Kahlo. She's cool. That's good, sweetheart. Emma closed the book and looked at him. Dad, are you going to work for them? Ryan's hands tightened on the wheel. I don't know yet. I think you should. Why? Emma shrugged. Because you seem happy when you talk about them, and you haven't seemed happy in a long time. Ryan's throat closed up. He didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to explain that happiness felt dangerous, that every time he let himself feel it, something got taken away. When they got home, Ryan tucked Emma into bed and sat on the edge of her mattress. Can I ask you something? He said. Uh-huh. If I did take this job, and I'm not saying I will, it would mean I'd have to travel sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. Would you be okay with that? Emma was quiet for a moment, her face serious. Then she said, "Would you be helping people?" "Yeah, I would." "Like you helped Sarah?" "Yeah." Emma nodded. "Then it's okay. Mrs. Chen can stay with me, and you'll always come back, right?" Ryan's eyes burned. "I'll always come back." "Then it's okay," Emma repeated. She reached up and hugged him. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart." Ryan turned off the light and closed the door. Then he went to the kitchen and poured himself a drink he didn't want. He thought about what Marcus had said, about the people out there waiting for help that would never come, about the skills he had that were going to waste in a warehouse or a dead-end job. He thought about the crash, about his co-pilot's face in those final seconds, about the guilt he'd carried for 5 years. And he thought about the moment the helicopter had lifted off the valley floor in the Andes. The fear, the focus, the absolute certainty that he was doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Ryan pulled out his phone and stared at Marcus's number. Then he put the phone down and went to bed. But he didn't sleep. The next morning, Ryan drove to the airfield. He didn't call ahead, didn't tell anyone he was coming. He just got in his truck and drove. When he arrived, the place was quiet. A few mechanics were working on a small plane near one of the hangars. Ryan walked past them to the large hangar where the helicopter was kept. It was still there, exactly where they'd left it after the rescue. Ryan walked up to it slowly, running his hand along the fuselage. The metal was cool and smooth. He could see the wear from the flight, scratches on the paint, a small dent near the tail. Evidence of what they'd been through. He climbed into the cockpit and sat down. The seat molded to him like an old glove. His hands found the controls without thinking, the collective, the cyclic, the pedals beneath his feet. It felt right. Ryan sat there for a long time, not moving, just breathing. And slowly, the fear that had been coiled tight in his chest began to loosen. He'd spent 5 years running from this, from the sky, from the part of himself that lived for the rush of altitude and the challenge of impossible flights. He told himself he was being responsible, that he was protecting Emma by staying on the ground. But maybe he'd been protecting himself. Maybe he'd been so afraid of failing again that he'd stopped trying. Ryan pulled out his phone and called Marcus. "I'm in," he said when Marcus answered. There was a pause, then, "You're sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Marcus let out a breath. "When can you start?" "Give me a week to get things settled. Then we'll talk details." "Done." "Thank you, Ryan." "Don't thank me yet. I haven't saved anyone." "You already have." Ryan hung up and sat in the cockpit for a few more minutes. Then he climbed out, locked the hangar, and drove home. The next week was a blur. Ryan met with Marcus every day to discuss the logistics of the operation. They needed a name, a legal structure, insurance, equipment, pilots. Marcus had already started reaching out to potential clients, nonprofits, governments, private citizens who'd exhausted every other option. "We're not going to be cheap," Marcus said during one meeting, "but we'll be good, the best." Ryan spent his time vetting pilots. Marcus had compiled a list of candidates, former military, experienced rescue operators, people with the skills and the guts to do the job. Ryan interviewed them one by one, asking hard questions about their experience and their limits. Most of them were qualified. Some of them were cocky. A few of them reminded Ryan of himself before the crash. He hired 3, 2 men and 1 woman, all with more flight hours than most people had driving hours. They were careful, competent, and most importantly, honest about what they could and couldn't do. "We're not cowboys," Ryan told them during the first team meeting. "We assess every situation, we plan every detail, and if something doesn't feel right, we walk away. No mission is worth dying for." One of the pilots, a guy named Carter, with a thick southern accent, raised an eyebrow. "That why you flew into a storm in the Andes?" Ryan stared at him. "That storm came up fast. We didn't have a choice. But you handled it. I got lucky." "Luck's a skill, too," Carter said with a grin. Ryan didn't smile back. "Luck runs out. Preparation doesn't. Remember that." The team nodded, and Ryan felt the weight of leadership settle onto his shoulders. These people were going to trust him with their lives. He couldn't afford to screw it up. A week later, they got their first call. Marcus took the meeting, a father whose daughter had been kidnapped in a remote region of South America. The local authorities had given up. The family had no money for a ransom. The daughter was 17 years old. Marcus presented the case to Ryan. Can we do it? Ryan studied the map. The region was hostile, cartel territory, dense jungle, minimal infrastructure. It wasn't a rescue operation. It was a recovery mission at best, and at worst, a suicide run. No, Ryan said. Marcus frowned. Why not? Because we're not equipped for extractions in hostile territory. We're search and rescue, not special forces. This girl needs a tactical team, not pilots. So we just say no? We refer them to someone who can actually help. There are private military contractors who do this kind of work. Marcus looked disappointed, but nodded. Okay, I'll make the call. Ryan felt a pang of guilt as he watched Marcus walk away. The girl was still out there, still in danger. But saying no was part of the job. Knowing the difference between brave and reckless. The second call came 3 days later. A climber had gone missing on a peak in Alaska. She'd been out of contact for 48 hours. The weather was bad, but not impossible. The terrain was difficult, but accessible by helicopter. Ryan reviewed the information, consulted with his team, and said yes. They flew out the next day. The mission went smoothly. They found the climber sheltered in a crevasse, dehydrated and suffering from mild hypothermia, but alive. They extracted her, flew her to a hospital, and were back home within 24 hours. It felt good. Better than good. It felt right. Emma asked him about it when he got home. Did you save someone? Yeah. Was it scary? Ryan thought about the narrow passes, the wind buffeting the helicopter, the moment they'd spotted the climber's signal flare. A little, but we were prepared. Emma hugged him. I'm proud of you, Dad. Ryan held her tight and felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Over the next 2 months, the team took on 6 more missions. A hiker lost in the Rockies. A research team stranded on an ice shelf. A fisherman whose boat had capsized off the coast of Oregon. Each mission was different. Each one pushed them in new ways. And each time they brought someone home, Ryan felt a little more whole. But success came with a price. The missions were exhausting. The stress was constant. And every time Ryan climbed into the cockpit, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if this is the one that goes wrong?" One night, after a particularly difficult rescue, a teenager who'd fallen into a ravine and broken both legs, Ryan came home to find Victoria sitting on his couch. He stopped in the doorway. "How did you get in?" "Mrs. Chen let me in. She's upstairs with Emma." Ryan set his bag down. "What are you doing here?" "Checking on you." "I'm fine." Victoria stood and crossed her arms. "You look exhausted." "I am exhausted. That's what happens when you work. Marcus says you've been taking on too much, that you're flying more missions than anyone else on the team." Ryan walked past her to the kitchen and grabbed a beer from the fridge. "Marcus should mind his own business." You are his business. You're the whole operation, Ryan." "I'm doing my job." "No, you're punishing yourself." Ryan froze, the bottle halfway to his lips. "Excuse me?" Victoria's voice softened. "You're trying to make up for the crash. For your co-pilot. You think if you save enough people, it'll balance the scales. But it won't. It doesn't work like that." Ryan set the beer down hard. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Victoria stepped closer. "I watched my life fall apart piece by piece for years. I drowned myself in work, in alcohol, in anything that would make me forget how much I hated myself. And it didn't help. It never helps." Ryan looked at her, his jaw tight. "So what's your point?" "My point is that you can't outrun guilt. You have to face it, and you have to forgive yourself." "I don't need forgiveness." "Yes, you do." Victoria's eyes were fierce. "You did everything right. The crash wasn't your fault, and you've spent 5 years punishing yourself for something you couldn't control." Ryan turned away. "I should have done more." "There was nothing more to do. You were a good pilot. You still are. But you're also human. And humans make mistakes, and sometimes bad things happen to good people for no reason at all." Ryan's hands clenched into fists. If I'd been better. Stop. Victoria grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. Stop. You've saved 8 people in 2 months. 8. That's 8 families who still have someone they love. That's 8 lives that wouldn't exist without you. So stop telling yourself you're not enough. Because you are. Ryan stared at her, his chest heaving, and for the first time since the crash, he felt the weight of the guilt begin to crack. Victoria let go of his arm. I should go. But think about what I said. She left, and Ryan stood alone in his kitchen, shaking. That night he dreamed about the crash. But this time, when the helicopter went down, his co-pilot looked at him and said, It's okay. You did everything you could. Ryan woke up with tears on his face. The next morning, he called a meeting with the team. We need to talk about workload, he said. I've been taking on too many missions myself. That needs to change. From now on, we rotate. Everyone flies. Everyone rests. No exceptions. Carter leaned back in his chair. Including you? Especially me. The team exchanged glances, then nodded. Good, Ryan said, because this only works if we take care of each other. We are not heroes. We're just people trying to do the right thing, and people need rest. It was a small change, but it felt like a turning point. Over the next few weeks, Ryan started sleeping better. He spent more time with Emma. He stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes for the next mission. And slowly, he started to believe what Victoria had said. He was enough. One evening, Marcus invited him over for dinner again. This time, it was just the 2 of them. How are you feeling? Marcus asked as they sat on the porch with beers. Better? Good. Marcus took a sip. I've been meaning to tell you something. What? Sarah's moving back home, to her old apartment. She's ready. Ryan smiled. That's great. Yeah, it is. Marcus looked out at the yard. She told me yesterday that she's thinking about going back to school, finishing her degree. She wants to be a counselor, help people who've been through trauma. She'd be good at that. She would. Marcus glanced at Ryan. She said you inspired her. Ryan shook his head. I didn't do anything. You did everything. Marcus's voice was serious. You gave her a second chance, and now she wants to give that to other people. That's a hell of a legacy, Ryan. Ryan didn't know what to say. He just sat there, watching the sunset, feeling something warm and unfamiliar settle in his chest. Maybe it was peace, or maybe it was just the beginning of it. 6 months into running the operation, Ryan got a call that brought everything full circle. It was late afternoon and he was at the airfield going over maintenance logs with Carter when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. This is Ryan. Mr. Cole, my name is Jennifer Matthews. I'm calling from the National Transportation Safety Board. Ryan's stomach dropped. Okay. I'm reaching out because we've reopened the investigation into the helicopter crash from 5 years ago. The one involving... I know which one, Ryan said, his voice tight. There was a pause. We've uncovered new evidence. Evidence that corroborates what you reported at the time. The mechanical failure wasn't something you could have prevented or detected. The manufacturer covered up the defect. Ryan sat down on a nearby crate, his legs suddenly unsteady. Why are you telling me this now? Because we're issuing a formal exoneration. Your record will be cleared, and we're recommending criminal charges against the contractor responsible. Her voice softened. I know this doesn't bring back your co-pilot, Mr. Cole, but I wanted you to know that you were right. It wasn't your fault. Ryan closed his eyes. After all this time, after everything he'd been through, hearing those words from an official source should have felt like vindication. And it did. But it also felt hollow. Because David was still gone. And no amount of exoneration would change that. Thank you for calling, Ryan said quietly. There's one more thing. The families of crash victims are eligible for compensation from the settlement. That includes you. I don't want their money. Mr. Cole, I don't want it. Ryan's voice was firm. Give my share to David's family. They deserve it more than I do. There was a long pause. I'll make sure that happens. After she hung up, Ryan sat there for a while staring at nothing. Carter walked over and sat down beside him. You okay, boss? Ryan nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I am. That night, Ryan told Emma about the call. She didn't fully understand what it meant, but she hugged him anyway. "Does this mean you don't have to be sad anymore?" she asked. Ryan smiled and kissed the top of her head. "I'm working on it, sweetheart." The next morning, he drove to the cemetery. He hadn't been there since the funeral 5 years ago. Hadn't been able to face it. But now, with the investigation closed and the truth finally acknowledged, he felt like he owed David one last visit. The headstone was simple. David Chen, beloved son and brother. Ryan stood in front of it, hands in his pockets, trying to find the right words. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I spent so long blaming myself instead of honoring what you taught me. You were a better pilot than I ever was, and a better person." The wind rustled through the trees. Ryan wiped his eyes. "I'm flying again," he continued. "I know you'd probably tell me I'm crazy, that I should have stayed on the ground, but I couldn't. It's who I am, and I think you'd understand that." He stood there for a few more minutes, then placed his hand on the headstone. "Rest easy, David. I've got it from here." When Ryan got back to the airfield, Victoria was waiting for him. She was leaning against his truck, arms crossed, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. "Marcus told me about the NTSB call," she said. "Of course he did. How are you feeling?" Ryan shrugged. "Relieved, sad, grateful, all of it at once." Victoria nodded. "That sounds about right." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Victoria said, "I have something to tell you. Marcus and I are separating." Ryan looked at her in surprise. "What?" "It's been a long time coming. We've been holding on for the wrong reasons, but we talked last night and we both agreed it's time to let go." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Victoria smiled and it looked genuine. "It's the right decision. We want different things, and we've both changed too much to go back to who we were." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Maybe travel. Maybe go back to school. I've spent my whole life building a career I don't even like. It's time to figure out what I actually want." Ryan understood that feeling better than anyone. "Well, whatever you decide, I think you'll be good at it." Victoria laughed. "Thanks. And Ryan, thank you for that night, for helping me. I know I was a mess, but you didn't judge me. You just showed up. That meant more than you know." "You helped me too," Ryan said. "You made me see that I was worth more than I thought." Victoria reached out and squeezed his hand. "You always were." A week later, the team got a call that would test everything they'd built. A small plane had gone down in the mountains of Montana. 4 passengers, severe weather. The official search and rescue teams had suspended operations due to dangerous conditions. The family of one of the passengers reached out to Marcus directly. Their daughter was on that plane. She was 23 years old, a recent college graduate. They were willing to pay whatever it took. Marcus brought the case to Ryan. "The weather's bad," Marcus said, showing him the reports. "But it's not impossible. The window's narrow, but it exists." Ryan studied the data. The conditions were worse than the Andes, more unpredictable, more dangerous. But the plane had gone down less than 48 hours ago. If anyone was alive, they wouldn't last much longer. "What does the team think?" Ryan asked. "Carter says he'll fly if you will. The others are willing, but cautious." Ryan looked at the map, at the crash site, at the narrow weather window. He thought about Sarah, alone in the mountains for 3 years, about the climber in Alaska, about every person they'd brought home, and he thought about David, about the crash, about the fear that had kept him grounded for so long. "We go," Ryan said. "But we do it smart. We take the best equipment. We wait for the safest window. And if it doesn't feel right when we get there, we turn back. No heroics." Marcus nodded. "Agreed." They flew out the next morning, Ryan, Carter, and Ellison. The flight to Montana took 4 hours. When they arrived at the staging area, the local rescue coordinator briefed them. "We spotted the wreckage yesterday, but we couldn't get close. The terrain's too unstable. We lost visibility completely this morning." "What about survivors?" Ryan asked. "Unknown. We saw movement near the crash site yesterday, but we can't confirm anything." Ryan thanked him and gathered his team. "Here's the plan," Ryan said. "Carter, you're backup. If I go down, you extract everyone and get the hell out. Ellison, you're with me. We land, assess, and extract anyone we find. We've got maybe 2 hours before the weather closes in completely." "What if there's more than we can carry?" Ellison asked. "Then we make 2 trips. And if the weather turns before we can get back?" Ryan met her eyes. "Then we find shelter and wait it out." They loaded into the helicopter and took off. The mountains rose around them, snow-covered and forbidding. The clouds were low and dark, and Ryan could feel the wind buffeting the aircraft. "Visibility's down to a 1/4 mile, Carter said over the radio from the backup helicopter. "You sure about this?" "No," Ryan said. "But we're doing it anyway." He pushed forward, navigating through the valleys by instruments and instinct. The crash site appeared ahead, a scattered field of debris on a steep slope. Ryan circled once, looking for a landing spot. "There," Ellison said, pointing to a flat area about 100 yards from the wreckage. Ryan brought the helicopter down carefully. The wind was strong, pushing them sideways. He compensated, fighting the controls. The skids touched down hard, and Ryan killed the engine. "Let's move," he said. They jumped out and ran toward the wreckage. The cold was brutal, the wind tearing at their clothes. Ryan could see pieces of the plane scattered across the slope, wings, seats, luggage, and then he saw movement. A woman was crawling out from under a section of fuselage, waving weakly. "Over here!" Ryan shouted. They reached her together. She was young, maybe mid-20s, her face pale and streaked with blood. But she was alive. "How many others?" Ryan asked. "3, she gasped. 2 dead, 1 trapped. Ellison immediately started treating the woman's injuries while Ryan looked for the trapped passenger. He found him 30 yards away, a man in his 40s, pinned under a piece of the wing. He was conscious, but barely. "I'm Ryan. I'm here to get you out." The man nodded weakly. Ryan assessed the situation. The wing section was heavy, but not impossible to move. He radioed Carter. "I need you down here. We've got someone trapped." "On my way." Carter landed his helicopter nearby and ran over. Together they lifted the wing section just enough for Ryan to pull the man free. He screamed in pain. His leg was broken, possibly his ribs too. But he was out. "Get him to the helicopter," Ryan ordered. Carter and Ellison carried the man while Ryan helped the woman. The wind was getting stronger. Snow was starting to fall. They reached the helicopter and loaded both survivors inside. Ryan climbed into the cockpit and started the engine. The rotors spun up, and he pulled the collective. The helicopter lifted off just as the storm hit in full force. Visibility dropped to nothing. Ryan flew by instruments alone, trusting the GPS and his own instincts. The wind threw them sideways, and he corrected, his hands steady on the controls. "Come on," he muttered. "Just a little further." The valley opened up ahead, and suddenly they were clear. The storm was behind them, and open sky stretched out ahead. Ryan exhaled and keyed the radio. "Carter, you with me?" "Right behind you, boss." They flew to the nearest hospital, landed, and handed off the survivors to the waiting medical team. The woman was going to be fine. The man would need surgery, but he'd live. As Ryan watched them being wheeled inside, he felt something settle in his chest. Not pride exactly, but satisfaction. The deep bone-level certainty that he'd done what he was meant to do. Carter clapped him on the shoulder. "Hell of a flight." "Yeah," Ryan said. "It was." When they got back to the city, Marcus was waiting at the airfield with news. "The families want to meet you," he said. "Both of them. They want to thank you in person." Ryan shook his head. "That's not necessary." "I know, but they're coming anyway." The next day, Ryan met with the families. The woman's parents were there, and the man's wife and daughter. They thanked him over and over, crying and hugging him, and Ryan stood there awkwardly, not sure what to say. The man's daughter, a girl about Emma's age, looked up at him with wide eyes. "You saved my dad," she said. Ryan crouched down to her level. "Yeah, I did." "Thank you." Ryan's throat tightened. "You're welcome." When they left, Marcus pulled Ryan aside. "You did good," Marcus said. "We all did." "No, you led. You made the call. You took the risk, and you brought them home." Marcus's voice was serious. "That's what leaders do." Ryan didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded. That night, Ryan came home to find Emma waiting up for him. She was supposed to be in bed, but she was sitting at the kitchen table with her sketchbook. You're home late, she said. Sorry, sweetheart. Busy day. Emma held up her drawing. It was a picture of a helicopter with a stick figure pilot inside. Above it, she'd written in careful letters, "My dad, the hero." Ryan's eyes burned. Emma, Mrs. Chen told me what you do, about how you save people. Emma's voice was small. I didn't understand before. But now I do. Ryan sat down beside her. I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just someone who tries to help. That's what heroes do, Dad. Ryan pulled her into his arms and held her close. I love you so much. I love you too. Over the next few months, the operation grew. They hired more pilots, took on more missions, saved more lives. And with each rescue, Ryan felt a little more of the old guilt fall away. He wasn't perfect. He still had bad days, still woke up sometimes from nightmares about the crash. But he'd learned to live with it, to carry it without letting it crush him. One evening, Sarah invited him to coffee. She was back in school now, thriving in her counseling program. She looked healthy, strong, more like herself than the fragile woman he'd pulled from the mountains. I wanted to thank you again, she said. You already did. I know. But I don't think I ever really explained what you gave me. Sarah leaned forward. It wasn't just my life, Ryan. It was my future. My chance to be more than a victim. To help other people the way you helped me. Ryan smiled. You're going to be great at it. I hope so. Sarah paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever regret it, flying again? Ryan thought about it, about the fear, the risk, the nights he couldn't sleep because he was worrying about the next mission. No, he said finally. I don't. Why not? Because this is who I am, and I spent too long pretending to be someone else. Sarah nodded slowly. I understand that. They talked for another hour about life and second chances and the strange paths that led people to where they were supposed to be. When they said goodbye, Sarah hugged him. You changed my life, Ryan. I'll never forget that. Well, you changed mine too, Ryan said. And he meant it. A year after the Montana rescue, Ryan stood in front of the team at their annual meeting. They'd grown to 12 pilots now, plus support staff. They'd completed 43 missions, saved 62 lives. I want to thank all of you, Ryan said. A year ago, this was just an idea. Now it's real, and it's real because you showed up, because you believed we could make a difference. Carter raised his coffee cup. To making a difference. The others echoed him, and Ryan smiled. After the meeting, Marcus pulled him aside. I have something for you, Marcus said, handing him a folder. Ryan opened it. Inside was a legal document, a partnership agreement, equal ownership of the company. Marcus, I can't. Yes, you can. You built this, Ryan. You earned it. Ryan stared at the document, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Ryan looked at Marcus, then at the team gathered in the hangar, then at the helicopters waiting to fly. Yes, he said. That night, Ryan took Emma to dinner at their favorite diner. She was 7 now, growing fast, already talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. Maybe I'll be a pilot like you, she said. Ryan smiled. You can be anything you want, sweetheart. But would you teach me if I wanted to fly? Ryan thought about it, about the fear, the danger, the weight of responsibility. And then he thought about the lives they'd saved, the families they'd reunited, the good they'd done. Yeah, he said. I'd teach you. Emma grinned. Cool. As they ate, Ryan looked out the window at the city lights. He thought about how far he'd come. From the warehouse parking lot to the Andes. From a man drowning in guilt to someone who'd found a way to live with it. From running away to flying toward. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been smooth. But it had been worth it. Because sometimes the things that break us are the same things that show us who we really are. And sometimes the only way to heal is to face the very thing we're most afraid of. Ryan had spent 5 years on the ground, convinced he'd lost himself in that crash. But the truth was simpler and harder than that. He hadn't lost himself. He'd just forgotten how to fly. And now, finally, he remembered. Later that week, Ryan stood at the airfield at dawn, watching the sun break over the horizon. The helicopter sat ready behind him, fueled and waiting. In a few hours, they'd take off for another mission, a hiker lost in the Cascades. Nothing too dangerous, but it mattered. They all mattered. Victoria walked up beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. "Big day?" she asked. "Just another rescue." "There's no such thing as just another rescue," Victoria said. "Every one of them is someone's whole world." Ryan nodded. She was right. The woman they were searching for had a family waiting. Friends. A life that mattered. And if they could bring her home, that would be enough. "You ever think about that night?" Ryan asked. "The night I drove you home?" Victoria smiled. "All the time." "Do you regret it?" "Getting drunk in a parking lot? Yeah, I regret that." She took a sip of coffee. "But meeting you? No, that changed everything. For me too." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light spread across the sky. And Ryan realized that this moment, this team, this purpose, was what he'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, not redemption, just a chance to be useful, to matter, to show up when it counted. Emma came running across the tarmac, her backpack bouncing. Mrs. Chen was behind her, waving. "Dad, I made you something!" Emma thrust a folded piece of paper into his hands. Ryan opened it. It was another drawing, him standing in front of the helicopter, Emma beside him, both of them smiling under a bright sun. At the bottom, she'd written, "To the best dad in the world." Ryan's chest tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart. Will you come to my art show next week?" "I wouldn't miss it." Emma hugged him, then ran back to Mrs. Chen. Ryan watched them walk toward the parking lot, his daughter's laughter carrying on the wind. Carter emerged from the hangar, flight suit on, ready to go. "We're all set, boss." Ryan folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into Aowa's jacket pocket. Then he turned toward the helicopter. "Let's go bring someone home," he said. And as the rotors began to spin and the helicopter lifted off the ground, Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of fear, not the end of doubt, but the deep, unshakable knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The sky opened up before him, wide and endless. And Ryan Cole, father, pilot, survivor, flew into it without hesitation. Because he'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that the things we're most afraid of are often the things that save us. That running from our past doesn't heal it. That forgiveness starts not with others, but with ourselves. And that sometimes the only way to find your way home is to have the courage to fly. The helicopter climbed higher, leaving the ground behind. And in the cockpit, Ryan smiled. He was finally free. 6 months into running the operation, Ryan got a call that brought everything full circle. It was late afternoon, and he was at the airfield going over maintenance logs with Carter when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "This is Ryan." "Mr. Cole, my name is Jennifer Matthews. I'm calling from the National Transportation Safety Board." Ryan's stomach dropped. "Okay." "I'm reaching out because we've reopened the investigation into the helicopter crash from 5 years ago. The one involving—" "I know which one," Ryan said, his voice tight. There was a pause. "We've uncovered new evidence that corroborates what you reported at the time. The mechanical failure wasn't something you could have prevented or detected. The manufacturer covered up the defect." Ryan sat down on a nearby crate, his legs suddenly unsteady. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because we're issuing a formal exoneration. Your record will be cleared. And we're recommending criminal charges against the contractor responsible." Her voice softened. "I know this doesn't bring back your co-pilot, Mr. Cole, but I wanted you to know that you were right. It wasn't your fault." Ryan closed his eyes. After all this time, after everything he'd been through, hearing those words from an official source should have felt like vindication. And it did. But it also felt hollow. Because David was still gone. And no amount of exoneration would change that. "Thank you for calling," Ryan said quietly. After she hung up, Ryan sat there for a while, staring at nothing. Carter walked over and sat down beside him. "You okay, boss?" Ryan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I am." That night, Ryan told Emma about the call. She didn't fully understand what it meant, but she hugged him anyway. "Does this mean you don't have to be sad anymore?" she asked. Ryan smiled and kissed the top of her head. "I'm working on it, sweetheart." The next morning, he drove to the cemetery. He hadn't been there since the funeral 5 years ago, hadn't been able to face it. But now, with the investigation closed and the truth finally acknowledged, he felt like he owed David one last visit. The headstone was simple: David Chen, beloved son and brother. Ryan stood in front of it, hands in his pockets, trying to find the right words. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I spent so long blaming myself instead of honoring what you taught me. You were a better pilot than I ever was. And a better person." He paused. "I'm flying again. I know you'd probably tell me I'm crazy, that I should have stayed on the ground. But I couldn't. It's who I am. And I think you'd understand that." He stood there for a few more minutes, then placed his hand on the headstone. "Rest easy, David. I've got it from here." When Ryan got back to the airfield, Marcus was waiting with news. "Sarah's moving back to her own place," Marcus said. "She's ready." Ryan smiled. "That's great." "Yeah, it is." Marcus paused. "She also told me she's going back to school, wants to be a counselor, help people who've been through trauma. She'd be good at that." "She would." Marcus looked at Ryan. "She said you inspired her, that if you could face your past and turn it into something good, she could too." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded. A week later, Sarah invited him to coffee. She looked healthy now, stronger, more like the person she was meant to be. "I wanted to thank you again," she said. "You already did." "I know, but I don't think I ever really explained what you gave me." Sarah leaned forward. "It wasn't just my life, Ryan. It was my future, my chance to be more than a survivor, to help other people the way you helped me." Ryan smiled. "You're going to be great at it." "I hope so." Sarah paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever regret it, flying again?" Ryan thought about it, about the fear, the risk, the nights he couldn't sleep because he was worrying about the next mission. "No," he said finally. "I don't." "Why not?" "Because this is who I am, and I spent too long pretending to be someone else." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand that." They talked for another hour, and when they said goodbye, Sarah hugged him. "You changed my life, Ryan. I'll never forget that." "You changed mine too," Ryan said, and he meant it. 3 months later, Ryan stood in front of the team at their quarterly meeting. They'd grown to 8 pilots now, plus support staff. They'd completed 27 missions, saved 34 lives. "I want to thank all of you," Ryan said. 6 months ago, this was just an idea. Now it's real. And it's real because you showed up. Because you believed we could make a difference." Carter raised his coffee cup. "To making a difference." The others echoed him, and Ryan smiled. After the meeting, Marcus pulled him aside. "I have something for you." He handed Ryan a folder. Ryan opened it. Inside was a legal document, a partnership agreement, equal ownership of the company. "Marcus, I can't." "Yes, you can. You built this, Ryan. You earned it." Ryan stared at the document, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Ryan looked at Marcus, then at the team gathered in the hangar, then at the helicopters waiting to fly. "Yes," he said. That night, Ryan took Emma to dinner at their favorite diner. She was 7 now, growing fast, already talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. "Maybe I'll be a pilot like you," she said. Ryan smiled. "You can be anything you want, sweetheart. But would you teach me? If I wanted to fly?" Ryan thought about it, about the fear, the danger, the weight of responsibility. And then he thought about the lives they'd saved, the families they'd reunited, the good they'd done. "Yeah," he said, "I'd teach you." Emma grinned and went back to her food, and Ryan watched her, feeling something settle deep in his chest. Not happiness, exactly, but contentment. The kind that comes from knowing you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Later that week, Ryan stood at the airfield at dawn, watching the sun break over the horizon. The helicopter sat ready behind him, fueled and waiting. In a few hours, they'd take off for another mission, a hiker lost in the Cascades. Nothing too dangerous. But it mattered. Victoria walked up beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. She looked different these days, lighter, freer. She'd left Marcus amicably, started her own consulting firm, was finally doing work she cared about. "Big day?" she asked. Just another rescue. There's no such thing as just another rescue, Victoria said. Every one of them is someone's whole world. Ryan nodded. She was right. The woman they were searching for had a family waiting, friends, a life that mattered, and if they could bring her home, that would be enough. You ever think about that night? Ryan asked. The night I drove you home? Victoria smiled. All the time. Do you regret it? Getting drunk in a parking lot? Yeah, I regret that. She took a sip of coffee. But meeting you? No. That changed everything. For me too. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light spread across the sky, and Ryan realized that this moment, this team, this purpose, was what he'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, not redemption, just a chance to be useful, to matter, to show up when it counted. Emma came running across the tarmac, her backpack bouncing. Mrs. Chen was behind her, waving. Dad, I made you something! Emma thrust a folded piece of paper into his hands. Ryan opened it. It was another drawing, him standing in front of the helicopter, Emma beside him, both of them smiling under a bright sun. At the bottom, she'd written, "To the best dad in the world." Ryan's chest tightened. Thank you, sweetheart. Will you come to my art show next week? I wouldn't miss it. Emma hugged him, then ran back to Mrs. Chen. Ryan watched them walk toward the parking lot, his daughter's laughter carrying on the wind. Carter emerged from the hangar, flight suit on, ready to go. We're all set, boss. Ryan folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he turned toward the helicopter. Let's go bring someone home, he said. And as the rotors began to spin and the helicopter lifted off the ground, Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of fear, not the end of doubt, but the deep, unshakable knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The sky opened up before him, wide and endless, and Ryan Cole, father, pilot, survivor, flew into it without hesitation, because he'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that the things we're most afraid of are often the things that save us, that running from our past doesn't heal it, that forgiveness starts not with others, but with ourselves, and that sometimes the only way to find your way home is to have the courage to fly.